In this video, you're going to learn how to install and set up Webpack Dev Server. It's a little development server similar to Live Server, which we've been using so far, but Webpack Dev Server comes with some nice to have features specific to Webpack. For example, it's going to speed up the process between changing our application files and actually seeing those changes reflected in the browser. While there's nothing wrong with Live Server, it's a generic server. We're going to be switching over to Webpack Dev Server instead. Now we can learn more about this tool over inside of the docs as always, webpackjs.org. We're going to head over to the documentation page, and this time we're looking for Dev Server in the left-hand side. Right here we have Dev Server, and I'm just going to head over there. Now I'll show you how to set this up for our purposes, but if you scroll down, you can see there are a ton of different ways you can configure this server. There are actually a ridiculous amount of options. There's only one though that we really need to start getting the advantages of Dev Server, so let's go ahead and set that up. The first thing we have to do though is we need to install this new tool. So that's where we'll start. I'm going to switch over to the terminal and shut down the current build, and what we're going to do is just run yarn add. Now the tool we're about to install could be installed globally and executed from the command line, but we already know that's a bad idea, so we're going to be installing it locally and running it via a script in package.json. So right here, we're going to add it. It's webpack-dev-server, and we will install the most recent version 2.5.1. Now we can go ahead and actually install this locally, and once it is installed, we can actually set up the script and configure it in webpack config.js. So everything is installed. If we head over back to the documentation, there are quite a few different properties here. We actually only need to get one set up in order to take advantage of the Webpack Dev Server, and this is content base. This lets us tell the dev server where it can find our public files. So in this case, it's the public folder. That is where stuff like index.html lives. If we don't configure this, Webpack Dev Server is not going to know where to find our public assets. This is really similar to how we configured Live Server in package.json. Right here, we call Live Server, and we have to tell it to look in the public folder. We're essentially doing the same thing, but it's going to happen in the Webpack config file. Down near the bottom, we're going to be setting up the dev server property. Now this is an object, and on this object, we can provide any of these guys. So everything from allowed hosts at the top to watch options down at the bottom. All we're going to do for now though is set up content base right here, content base. And we need to set this equal to the absolute path to those public assets. In this case, that is the public folder. Now we already have code that gets that done in this file. Right here, we have path.join. We join together the root of the application with the public folder, resulting in the absolute path. If we just take that and copy it, we can paste it down below, and there we have it. We've just successfully configured Webpack Dev Server. Now we can start taking advantage of it. All we have to do is set up a script that actually runs it, and we'll be able to run it from the terminal. Inside of here, we have quite a few scripts. We're actually just going to clean house. We're going to remove build Babel completely. That is no longer necessary. We're also going to switch up the build script. Right now, the build script, it runs Webpack in watch mode. This is going to be redundant since we're going to be creating a new script for the dev server. So we're just going to leave build around that runs Webpack directly. This will be useful when we start getting into production Webpack builds. But for now, we just have the serve script, which serves up the public folder. We have the build script, which generates the bundle.js file a single time. And we're going to add a new one right here, dev server. All this is going to do is run Webpack Dev Server, which is the command that Webpack Dev Server provides to us. Now we don't have to provide any arguments. All of the arguments sit here inside of webpack config.js. The Webpack Dev Server is going to read that file and use that to bootstrap itself. So now we are ready to actually run Dev Server from the command line. And the nice thing is that we no longer need two processes running. We don't need Live Server and Webpack Watch. Instead, we can just use Dev Server. That's going to be enough to get everything working. Over inside of the terminal, I'm going to clear the content for this first tab. I'm going to switch over to my other tab that's running Live Server. I'm going to shut that down and clear the content as well. Now we can use yarn run Dev Server. This is going to start the development server, and you can see right here it's giving us a little bit of output as to where we can access it. It's also showing us exactly where that output is served from. It's obviously served from the root right here. And we also get where on our machine all of the content comes from. And in this case, it's the path we specified, the public folder. And down below, we get a lot of the usual suspects, things we've seen when we run our Webpack build by itself. Now, though, we have both tools integrated into one. The dev server is our server, and it's also running Webpack when necessary. We can now switch over to localhost 8080 to check this out. Localhost, 8080. And when I get there, I get my indecision app exactly as we had it moments before. Now we are on a different URL, so the local storage values are going to be different, but we can seed the data here. So I can go ahead and toss some options in for coffee shops maybe. Let's toss in Plenty Cafe and B3. And both of the options do show up and they do persist excellent. So we have this dev server in place. There's one more important thing I want to talk about related to the dev server before we wrap this one up. Now, we get a lot of advantages from the dev server in terms of speed and local development. For example, our changes are live reloaded just like they were for live server. So if I were to toss some text on the end of this button, I could save the file and we would see those changes reflected in the browser. What's interesting though is that the bundle that's getting served up, that's making this all possible, it's not actually the physical bundle file inside of the public folder, and we can prove that. Let's go ahead and trash this file. I'm going to remove bundle.js, and I can hit this little refresh button and you can see it definitely is indeed gone. But if I refresh the browser, you're going to notice that the application still loads as expected. And even if we head over to the network tab, we can scroll through all of the requests made to load our page, and we can see it is indeed grabbing a bundle.js file. So what exactly is happening here? Well, what's happening is that the Webpack Dev Server itself, it is taking charge. It's generating the bundle file, but it's not actually writing the physical file and serving that up, which can slow things down. It is just serving it up from memory, which keeps our development server super snappy and fast. So even if we were to rerun the dev server from the terminal, we're still not going to get a physical bundle file. The Webpack Dev Server tool is never going to do that. I can refresh things and you can see it is still indeed missing. Now, obviously, there are times we want a physical file if we're serving things up to production, and we still have that option. We just need to run the other script. I'm going to clear the output and use yarn run build. This is going to run Webpack a single time, and this will eventually be the Webpack build that we set up for production. Right now, though, there's no production features inside of there, so it's still super huge. 2 megabytes, that's ridiculous. We'll worry about taking care of that later. But we do have a physical bundle file in place now. So using Webpack Dev Server is going to allow things to be real snappy. It's essentially a replacement for Live Server with some more Webpack specific features. All we needed to do to set it up was to set up the content base, letting Webpack Dev Server know where the public folder is. Then we were able to just kick things off by running the command via one of our scripts in package.json. Now that we have this in place, I want to take time in the next video to talk about how we can integrate some more cutting edge features into our applications. We're going to look at some alternative ways to work with the class syntax. That's going to require us to install a new Babel plugin, and I'm very excited to get to that. So stay tuned and I'll see you in the next one.